Welcome to the Forward Exam Test Administrator Training. This training is for all staff who will be administering or assisting in the administration of the Forward Exam. This presentation will walk through the entire Forward Exam administration process. If you have any questions after viewing this, please email Allison or Jennifer in the Office of Educational Accountability at DPI. Contact information is provided at the end of the presentation. The Forward Exam is a summative assessment designed to gauge how well students are doing in relation to the Wisconsin academic standards. The Forward Exam is administered online in the spring of each school year. More information about the exam is available on the Forward Exam webpage. All educators should have or know where to access the ELA, Mathematics, Science, and Social Studies Wisconsin academic standards. Every test question is aligned directly to an academic standard and measures grade level performance. There are no questions above or below grade level. DPI works with Wisconsin educators every year to ensure that the test questions are straightforward and high quality. Here are a few key dates to keep in mind, including the 6-week Forward Exam test window. A full list of dates is available on the Forward Exam calendar webpage. Please refer to that throughout the year as some dates are subject to change. Testing schedules are decided at a local level within the 6-week test window. Your assessment coordinator will share your local testing schedule with you. Your school should have testing backup plans in place in case a situation arises where testing is planned but cannot occur. This may happen if there is a technology or bandwidth issue that prevents students from testing on that day. Be sure you are aware of the backup plans and know when to use them. Have an alternate activity that students can do, such as reading a book, if technical issues arise and you need to wait for assistance. If resolution is going to take some time, students should be returned to regular activities. It is important to remain calm when technical issues arise to ensure students remain calm. We have updated the suggested test times handout, and it now includes the number of test questions for each content area and session. This handout is available on the Forward Exam Resources webpage. The testing times shown on the handout are estimates, and it is important to remember that students may take more time or less time to complete the test based on effort and ability levels. It is important to remember for ELA sessions 2 and 3, there is a short right task that is the first question, followed by 10 to 12 multiple choice questions. The short right task was purposely placed as the first question in the session to allow students plenty of time to write their paragraph and then move on to the remaining questions. If students do not finish the session in the allotted time, they are permitted to go back and complete any unanswered multiple choice questions. Students are not permitted to go back to the short right task and finish it at another time. So please instruct your students to do the short right task first and not to skip it. Test administrators are critical to the testing process. You must be aware of all testing policies, accessibility options, and test security procedures. If you are not aware of any one of these elements, a student's test may be at risk of being invalidated due to a misadministration. Test administrators not only prepare the students and the physical testing environment, but they also ensure that students who need accessibility features have them assigned and available during testing. A complete list of TA responsibilities are provided in the TA checklist available on the Forward Exam Resources webpage. Please use this checklist to ensure you and the students are prepared for testing. Today's training will cover TA responsibilities chronologically throughout the year as they are listed on the TA checklist. Test administrators must be trained staff who are employed by the school or district. Student teachers may serve as TAs if their regular responsibilities include supervising students. Parent volunteers are not allowed to administer the exam and are not allowed to be in the classroom during testing. School personnel who are parents or guardians are not allowed to administer the exam to their own children. Substitute teachers may only administer the exam if they have been fully trained in test administration, accessibility, and security policies and procedures, and have signed a confidentiality agreement. The Forward Exam webpage is where you can access the Forward calendar, manuals, accessibility resources, practice tests, trainings, educator involvement opportunities, technology resources, and more. We want all educators to know about and have access to this information. Allison and Jennifer in the Office of Educational Accountability are also available to answer any questions that you may have about the exam. This slide lists both required and recommended training materials and resources for test administrators. The required resources are those that DPI considers to be absolutely necessary for successful administration of the Forward exam. Be sure that you know how to access all available resources on the Forward Exam Resources webpage. If your district is opting to use the DRC online test monitoring, you will also be required to review the administrator tutorial for test monitoring and have access to the DRC Insight portal. Your most important resource is the Test Administration Manual, which includes the script that you will read aloud to students, common error messages that may appear on student devices, and more. You will notice that there is a section in the back of the manual that contains information specific to district and school assessment coordinators. This section is labeled DAC Administration Management. You may ignore this section of the manual as it does not pertain to your role as a test administrator. All test administrators need to sign a confidentiality agreement form and review the test security manual. State assessments must allow for the inclusion of all students, including students with disabilities and English learners. Accessibility resources are available on the Forward Exam Accommodations and Supports webpage. Today, we will review some accessibility features that educators often have questions about. The Accessibility Guide describes the allowed universal tools, designated supports, and accommodations for the Forward exam. Any student, including a student with an IEP or a 504 plan, may use a designated support if they have a need for it and use it regularly in the classroom. Only students with an IEP or 504 plan may use an accommodation if it is allowable and part of their plan. Be sure to review the current guide completely. Failure to provide appropriate supports will result in a testing irregularity and possible invalidation. Please reach out to Allison or Jennifer at DPI to discuss unique situations and for help to figure out the best way to allow those students access to the exam. This is a reminder that text-to-speech is a universal tool available for all students to use. This means all students have access to the TTS for the exam. TTS is the computer voice that reads direction and test content to a student, with the exception of the reading comprehension passages in ELA Session 1. Students will need to select the play button for each question they wish to use the TTS for. All students must be allowed to practice using the TTS on the Forward Exam practice test. This also means that every student will need headphones for each content area and session of the exam. DPI strongly recommends using wired headphones for testing. Although most students will now use the text-to-speech universal tool, the Read Aloud designated support can be assigned for students who have difficulties with the computer voice. For example, some students may have sensory issues that make wearing headphones difficult, or a hearing impairment that interferes with hearing the computer voice. The Read Aloud designated support is a human reading the test content to the student. Human readers are not allowed to read the reading passages in the ELA reading comprehension session. Educators who will be providing Read Aloud for a student must review the Read Aloud guidelines and sign the Forward Exam Read Aloud Protocol Agreement to Maintain Security and Confidentiality form. It is important to know the difference between the Read Aloud designated support and the accommodation. The Read Aloud accommodation is only for students who are visually impaired and in the process of learning Braille but are not yet proficient enough to access the test. Most districts in the state will not have any students using the Read Aloud accommodation. If you believe you have a student that requires the Read Aloud accommodation, please discuss this with your assessment coordinator, as a request form needs to be submitted to DPI for prior approval. Again, educators who will be providing Read Aloud for a student must review the Read Aloud guidelines and sign the Forward Exam Read Aloud Protocol Agreement to Maintain Security and Confidentiality form. Please contact Allison or Jennifer with questions regarding this information. The stacked Spanish translation support provides a complete Spanish translation of all test content together with the original English text for mathematics, science, and social studies. There is no translation available for ELA because the test is measuring a student's knowledge and understanding of the English language. Two options are available for the text-to-speech universal tool on the Spanish stacked translated form. Either the computer will read aloud the English content, or the computer will read aloud the Spanish content. Educators will need to determine on a student-by-student basis if a student will benefit more from hearing the English TTS or the Spanish TTS. The district assessment coordinator needs to select either English TTS or Spanish TTS when assigning the stacked form in the DRC Insight portal prior to printing test tickets. The English and Spanish TTS options can be assigned differently for different content areas. For example, some students may benefit from using English TTS on the math test, but may need Spanish TTS on the science test. There may be some instances where a student will benefit from having both English and Spanish read to them during testing, and in those cases, you will need to assign the Spanish stacked translation with either the English or Spanish TTS, and also assign the Human Read Aloud designated support for whichever language, either English or Spanish, that the TTS is not reading. There is an English Learner Supports Decision Tree in the Accessibility Guide to assist you in determining what supports your students need. Allison and Jennifer are also available to walk through individual student situations with you to determine the best supports. Accommodated test forms include Braille books and the print-on-demand test form. A very small number of students will be working from these accommodated test forms. There are administration instructions in the test administration manual for these forms. You must ensure that the test ticket has the accommodation code listed before testing. If the code is not on the test ticket, the accommodated form will not sync up with the online form where the student's answers must be scribed. This could lead to a test irregularity and misadministration. Braille forms must be ordered by your district assessment coordinator. District assessment coordinators must request approval from DPI to use a print-on-demand form. There are short administrator tutorials that demonstrate how to use some of the embedded tools, designated supports, and accommodations, including the text-to-speech universal tool. Each video is approximately 1 to 3 minutes. These videos are important for you to watch as you will be in the classrooms and will need to provide assistance to the students if they are having issues with the technology. There is also a tutorial that shows test administrators how to use the DRC test monitoring if your school or district chooses to use this optional feature. District and school assessment coordinators will begin collecting student-designated supports and accommodation needs from educators and special education coordinators beginning in January. All accommodations and supports should be assigned based on the individual student needs and requirements. Be sure that what is provided to the assessment coordinator aligns with students' regular use in the classroom and documentation including IEP and 504 plans. This is a reminder that any student, including a student with an IEP or a 504 plan, may use a designated support if they have a need for it and use it regularly in the classroom. Only students with an IEP or 504 plan may use an accommodation if it is allowable and part of their plan. If you have a student that requires an assistive technology device to access the exam, you will need to be sure to test the device prior to the student using it on the exam. A good way to test the device is with the Forward Exam Practice Test available through the secure DRC Insight application on student devices. Work with the assessment and technology coordinators to ensure students have their needed specialized equipment. Technology coordinators will be checking student devices to ensure they meet the minimum requirements for testing for the forward exam. We will go over checks that TAs can perform with students the morning of testing to help testing go smoothly. The DRC Insight Secure application is what students use to take the exam. It's a secure web browser application and must be installed on each student's testing device. The DRC Insight app and landing page have been redesigned this year to be more accessible for students. The screenshots are on this slide. They look a little different this year than they have in the past. Districts and schools have the option to use the DRC online test monitoring. Test monitoring in the DRC Insight portal allows test administrators to restrict student access to the forward exam during the login process and monitor student status during testing. This does not replace physical monitoring in the classroom. If test monitoring is added to a session, the students in that session will be required to enter a test monitoring code after logging into their test with their username and password that is on their test ticket. The test administrator will give all students in their classroom the same monitoring code which the students enter. Next, students need to select the session they will be taking, and then they will be placed in a virtual waiting room until the test administrator admits them into the test. These graphics show what a student will see if they are logging into a session where test monitoring has been turned on. This graphic shows what the test administrator can see on their screen if test monitoring is turned on. Information about how a student is progressing through the test is displayed on the test monitoring dashboard in real time. If your district or school opts to use the tool, you are required to view the test monitoring tutorial, have access to the DRC Insight portal, and use the test monitoring administration script in the test administration manual. The best preparation you can provide your students is to make sure the content of your curriculum aligns with the Wisconsin academic standards. All questions on the exam are tied directly to a standard. Students should be familiar with the layouts and tools of the assessment prior to taking the exam. There are tutorials to show the students how to log in and use the tools in the test. The practice test provides hands-on experience with the question formats and tools. About 2 to 3 weeks prior to testing, you will want to provide students the opportunity to review the student tutorial videos that demonstrate how to navigate in the test and use some of the embedded tools and accessibility features. These are short videos, approximately 2 to 3 minutes each. There is one set of student tutorials for grades 4 through 8 and grade 10, and a separate set of tutorials for grade 3 with simplified language. All student tutorials are also available in Spanish for students taking the stacked Spanish translated test form. One tutorial that is very important to have students complete is the pausing, ending, exiting, and submitting a test. If a student does not complete their test within the scheduled class period, they need to know how to exit the test but not submit their answers. All students should have the opportunity to use the practice test. It is especially important for third graders. The practice test is available publicly on the Forward Exam Practice Test webpage or in the DRC Insight test application that is installed on student devices. The publicly available practice test allows students and families to access it at home. This provides parents with an opportunity to see what the exam looks like and view the types of questions that are asked on the exam. We encourage educators to use the practice test to better understand how the standards they are teaching in the classroom are measured on the forward exam. For each question in the practice test, there is a Select to Enlarge button that shows standard alignment, the correct answer, and examples of common misconceptions students may have. This can also be used throughout the year with students. After you have completed a lesson targeting specific standards, you can show a practice test question for students to see how that content may be presented on the exam, let the students answer the question, and discuss the misconceptions that may have led students to an incorrect answer. There is also a new resource for teachers. In 2024, DPI partnered with the Greater Madison Writing Project and Wisconsin educators to develop resources to help teachers work on the writing academic standards with students. These are classroom units that are directly aligned to the writing standards, which are measured by the Forward Exam short write tasks. The units and more information are available on the DPI Writing Rich Classrooms webpage. About 1 week prior to testing, you should verify that you have everything you and your students will need during testing. TAs should all have a copy of the test administration manual, either electronically or printed, contact information for your assessment and technology coordinators, and printed room signs. In addition, headphones are now required for all students and all subject areas. Wired headphones are recommended. Try to have extra headphones on hand for students who may not have any. External keyboards are required for ELA Session 2 and ELA Session 3 so that students can type their responses to the short write questions. Students may use individual whiteboards instead of scratch paper, but it is the TA's responsibility to ensure the whiteboards are cleared of any content prior to and immediately after testing. All TAs must use scripts in the test administration manual to ensure all students throughout the state receive the same instructions. TAs should review the scripts prior to testing. There are 2 versions of the script. Script 1 should be used for the first test session because it provides detailed instructions for students to log into their test. Script 2 should be used when resuming the test or completing the remaining content area test sessions when you are sure that all students are able to log in without hearing the detailed instructions again. You should also take time to review the standardized instructions and protocols for read aloud and scribing if you will be providing these supports to students during testing. TAs need to prepare the testing environment. Remove or cover all instructional and content-related materials from walls and desks that might assist students in answering questions, including information on bulletin boards, chalkboards, dry erase boards, charts, displays that contain literary definitions, maps, mathematics, formulas, word walls, and number lines. TAs also need to ensure students will be provided a quiet environment without distractions for their testing. Before testing begins, decide on a plan for what students can do quietly in the classroom if they finish their test before the other students. No electronics may be used within the testing environment at any time. Please keep in mind that if students who have finished testing get up from their desks or leave the classroom, this can disturb other students or make other students feel pressured to rush and finish. On testing day, you need to post 2 signs, which are available on the Forward Exam Resources webpage. Post 1 sign outside of your classroom door to let others know testing is taking place. Post the other sign in the classroom to remind students that cell phones, smartwatches, smart glasses, calculators, and other electronic devices are not allowed to be used in the testing environment. They should be turned off and put away. This includes after a student finishes their test while others are still testing. Occasionally, a student may need an electronic device for a medical condition. Please contact Allison or Jennifer for guidance in these situations. On the day of testing, the TA must first instruct students to shut down and close all programs on their testing devices before they open the DRC Insight application. Even if the technology coordinator already turned off device settings, a student may have the ability to turn these back on, so it is important for the TA to verify device settings are correct. For example, TAs should verify that any built-in text-to-speech tools on testing devices are disabled, such as Chromevox and VoiceOver. If these features are not turned off, students will hear 2 text-to-speech voices during testing. The device setting for screen, scale, or display should be set to 100% on all devices. If the scale is set higher, a student may not be able to see a full question or enter a response to a question, so all devices should be set to 100%. For Chromebooks, the keyboard settings must be set to US English so that students can use correct punctuation when typing the ELA short write responses. For iPads, smart punctuation must be disabled. If a student is experiencing any of these issues during testing, have the student pause their test. Once the test is paused, you need to contact the technology coordinator. If needed, the student can exit the test by selecting Pause and then selecting Exit Test. Exiting the test in this way will not submit the student's answers, so the student will be able to log back in after the device settings are corrected. Help your students approach testing in a relaxed and positive way. Your attitude toward the test will affect their attitude and, in turn, their performance. Reassure students that they have plenty of time and they need to try to do their best. If problems arise, remain calm and your students will too. Students securely log into the test with a username and password, which are provided on a test ticket. When you are ready to begin testing, distribute test tickets to the students. It is critical that each student receive the correct test ticket. We recommend reading the student's name from the ticket as you hand it to the student. Remember that test tickets are secure materials and you must collect all test tickets at the end of each testing period. It is important to know in advance of testing if you have a student in your class that will not be testing due to being a newly arrived English learner or having a parent opt out. Tickets will still print for these students, so you need to be aware that they should not be in the testing environment. If a student is not testing, they need to be sent to a different location while testing is taking place. If a student has an accommodation or designated support assigned, it will be displayed on the student test ticket with a code. A list of these codes is available in the Test Administration Manual. The test administration script will remind you to go around the room and check that students have the designated supports or accommodations they need, and that those features are working correctly prior to the students clicking the Begin the Test button. You should do this after students have logged in with their test tickets while they are reading the test direction pages to themselves. Students using video sign language or stack translation should be able to see that feature working while in the test directions. Students may also need help adjusting the volume and speed of the universal text-to-speech tool. If a student does not have the accessibility feature that should have been assigned, have the student log out and then contact your assessment coordinator. If a student starts their test without their needed designated support or accommodation, or they have been assigned the incorrect support, tell the student to log out of the test immediately by selecting the Pause button and then selecting the Exit Test button. Then you need to contact the assessment coordinator. In most cases, the assessment coordinator will need to contact Allison or Jennifer for a solution. What we can do to fix this depends on how far the student has progressed through the test, so it is important to try to catch these issues prior to the student clicking the Begin the Test button. While you cannot help a student with the content of the test, we do not want a student hindered due to test-taking mechanics. For example, if a student is having trouble with a mechanical or technical issue, such as how to drag and drop, you are permitted to show them how to operate the item. You may not reword or simplify test content for the student. This would be a security violation, as you would be modifying the content of the test, and this may alter what is being measured. You may not help students with anything content-related, such as defining words or explaining what the question is asking of them. Test administrators should be aware of their monitoring responsibilities during testing. You should regularly move throughout the classroom to ensure students are on task, not talking, and not using personal calculators or electronics. TAs should not be on their phone or doing other work while monitoring testing and should not leave the classroom unattended. It is okay for you to use a phone to request another TA to come to the room if you need to leave the room. During testing, test administrators need to watch for and report any test security concerns. A test security incident or violation is any event, behavior, statement, or incident that gives a student an unfair advantage or compromises the security of the test. These can be intentional or accidental. Examples of security violations include, but are not limited to, emailing test content to anyone, even the DRC help desk, discussion of test content in break areas, or student use of an inappropriate or non-allowable accessibility feature. To prevent test security incidents, there are policies that must be followed. Test administrators need to be aware of this information. Unauthorized persons are not allowed to enter, observe, or photograph testing documents, test rooms, or preliminary activities. Unauthorized persons include school staff who are not administering or helping with the administration of the exam. Even principals should not be in testing environments and observing student testing unless they are serving in the role of test administrator or assistant to the test administrator. All test materials must be kept secure. This includes test tickets, accommodated forms, and scratch paper. Staff must immediately report all test violations to your assessment coordinator or the Office of Educational Accountability at DPI by calling or submitting an incident report form. The form is available on the Test Security webpage. DPI follows up on every report, and depending on the perceived severity, a fact-finding investigation and report may be necessary. A security violation may result in the invalidation of test results for a student or group of students. Public reporting will reflect all invalidated tests as not tested. Districts are responsible for communicating with parents what occurred and explain why their student will not be receiving any test scores. If a student accidentally submits their test before finishing, contact the district assessment coordinator. Only DACs have permission to unlock a test. When contacting your assessment coordinator, be sure to have all information, including the student name and WISE ID, school, grade level, content area and session, how long the student was in the test, and what happened that the test was submitted before the student was finished. The testing system does allow us to reconstruct the sequence of events leading up to a test submission. The test cannot automatically submit itself. The process of submitting the test involves 2 steps. First, the student must click on the End Test button, then a new screen appears, and the student must click the Submit button. There are instances in which a test will not be unlocked. You can refer to the Unlock Decision Tree in the Test Administration Manual for more information. About 2 weeks before the end of the testing window, you should check with your assessment coordinator to ensure that all of your students have completed all testing sessions. Every attempt should be made to administer make-up tests to students who miss one or more of the scheduled test sessions. If a student misses a session, allow the student to test with the rest of the class upon the student's return. Then schedule a make-up time for that student to go back and complete the missed sessions. Any student who does not complete all sessions within a content area will have a low score that may not be reflective of their true ability, so it is important that students are given the opportunity to complete testing. All test materials must be securely handled. Follow procedures in the Test Administration Manual for destroying or returning materials after testing. In May, the Forward Exam electronic summary data and individual student reports will be available in the DRC Insight portal. Your assessment coordinator will have access to this data. Hard copy ISRs will be sent to district June 16. Districts and schools should send ISRs to families as soon as reports are received. Some districts distribute the electronic copies, while others mail hard copy reports. Districts must provide individual student reports, ISRs, in a language the parent guardian can understand and in a format that is accessible to them. Your assessment coordinator can contact DPI to acquire a translation of the ISR if the language is not already provided on the Forward Exam Data and Results webpage. The Forward Exam is aligned directly to the Wisconsin academic standards. As educators, you can share this connection when talking with families about their students' Forward Exam scores. The ISR reporting categories are the same categories as the standards. You can refer families to the grade level standards and show them what a student should be able to do in a particular category of a content area. You can also use the connection between the standards and your students' Forward Exam results to identify possible gaps in the curriculum or classroom activities. Student forward exam scores are assigned to one of 4 performance levels. The performance level descriptors, referred to as PLDs, show the progression of knowledge and skills a student is expected to demonstrate at their grade level for each standard. There are PLDs for every content area and grade level. These can be helpful documents if parents have questions about what their students can do versus what the expectation is for each standard. We would like to share a forward exam educator involvement opportunity that is available to all Wisconsin educators, including special education and EL staff. Each year, we recruit about 90 Wisconsin educators from all over the state to participate in item review meetings. This is a wonderful opportunity for educators to have direct feedback on the questions developed for the forward exam. In the summer of 2026, DPI and DRC will conduct in-person educator item review meetings. The application to apply for this opportunity is available on the Forward Exam Educator Involvement website. We also wanted to share some of the feedback we received from the educators who participated in the 2025 item review. One educator said, "Taking part in the DRC Forward Exam item review for ELA was one of the best professional experiences I've had to date as an educator." This concludes our presentation. If you have any questions at any time during testing, you can contact the Wisconsin Forward Exam Help Desk at DRC. If you are contacting the Help Desk, be persistent and help them understand the urgency and nature of your issue. Of course, if you have any questions about this presentation or any questions about the forward exam, please feel free to contact DPI.